welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today? Well, we'll be vibing out as per usual, and you know me. Oh, well, no, not you know me, but you might expect me to talk about, because I believe there was a Nintendo Direct today. You might expect me to talk about that. I haven't actually seen it yet, so I don't know what's in it. So I mean, I'll be checking it out probably later today, so that thing's going to carry over. Instead, what we're going to be talking about today is Cuphead, or specifically Cuphead and the DLC. Now, I feel like I've spoken about the base game Cuphead before. I'm not really sure, but as of yesterday, I completed it. Spoilers, I suppose, for that content, but that was inevitably going to happen. Let's see, Cuphead. No, I want to search all my videos which says Cuphead. Have I spoken about it before in Animal Crossing? I feel like I must have. Maybe I haven't. Okay, maybe I haven't, so that's perfect. But anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow, it's 6:08 PM on Thursday, February 9th, 2023. I'm going to be talking about Cuphead and the Delicious Last Course DLC. So if you haven't played it and want to be unspoiled, then, here's your spoiler warning. Also, I suppose if you're watching my Let's Play and you don't want to see how it turns out, I guess spoilers as well. But, probably if you've been around for long enough, you'll know that if there's an Animal Crossing video titled it means I finished that game by this point. But you don't know how many episodes are necessarily left. Let's see, what episode has just been released? I see, Mortimer Freeze's episode has just been released. So yeah, what can I say? Except for, I played Cuphead pretty soon after it came out. Like, it was a game I had my eye on for a while because it was in development for a huge amount of time. Well, I suppose if you don't know what Cuphead is basically a game a boss rush sort of game, which is a boss rush shoot 'em up sort of game, which is inspired by the rubber hose sort of era of cartoons, 1920s, 1920s to 1940s, I suppose. It takes from a lot of different eras, I suppose. So when you look at it, you'll basically, in plain English, look at it and be like, hey, this looks like an old cartoon, because that's exactly the style it's going for. And I absolutely love it for that, because I love Cuphead for so many different reasons. But amusingly, it's not like necessarily a game I would recommend to too many people. Or I'd recommend it only if they're looking for a challenge, because it is quite a hard game. It's not the hardest game in the world, I would say, but it is difficult, and it's not always someone's cup of tea. But I would absolutely recommend this game for anyone, just because of the animations alone and the music alone is fantastic. It's because it's such a rare niche, I suppose, for this sort of like very nostalgic golden era, I suppose, age of cartoons, the rubber hose era, because no one wants to go for it, because one, it's incredibly annoying to animate. Like, nowadays it's a lot easier. I shouldn't say easier necessarily, but nowadays there's a lot more tools with regards to things for 2D animation, with animation and rigging, and 3D animation, of course, with modeling. People obviously don't want to go like, hey, let's hand draw frame by frame every single animation in this entire game, because that's just absolutely ludicrous. There's only two games I can think of which has done that, and that's Skullgirls has done that, and Cuphead is the other one which has done that. And it's incredibly time consuming. But as a consumer, obviously, like, looking at results, I'm just like, this looks amazing. And you might be able to argue that, like, maybe I wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between something which is computer, like vector animated, rigged, or whatever, versus hand drawn, but certainly I feel like I at least kind of can. I don't know why I'm speaking to you to talk to me. I have nothing to deposit, but yeah, it's really fantastic, like, aesthetically in that sense, and the music is fantastic. It's one of like 4 soundtracks I think I've ever bought for video game music, and you might be like, what are those soundtracks? The soundtracks are Cuphead, Ori and Blind Forest, and the Night in the Woods soundtrack, and Undertale. I think those are the only 4 soundtracks I've ever bought. Because I was like, this is so good, and here's my donation to the creators of it. It obviously takes on music of that era of the time, and you can tell how much I love a game because I'm talking about its aesthetics. How much I love the aesthetics because I'm talking about its aesthetics first over anything. Because that really is the shining star for me. I mean, its gameplay is also really good, which is why I stuck with it. If the gameplay was just mediocre, I probably wouldn't have even played it, or at least maybe not for a YouTube channel. I don't know. Yeah, but what was I going to say? It really is a shining star of the aesthetics of it, and the music's just perfectly on point with that sort of like ragtime. I'm not going to say jazzy, but the ragtime sort of swing music, piano music fits it perfectly. And I have massive respect for the fact the animations are not only are they hand drawn, they're not digitally they're traditionally hand drawn or digitally hand drawn. So, or they're sketched out initially on a pencil, I mean, I think vectored maybe afterwards, and I genuinely can't remember. No, I think they're coloured digitally. that was it. And then the background's actually proper watercolor, like scanned in or something, to really nail that aesthetic. So yeah, there's nothing else I can say. Is aesthetic is amazing. The animations are fantastic. The bosses, designs, like all of them, probably all of them. And I can't think of, there's probably some in the game which aren't like aesthetically that amazing, but most of them are so aesthetically wild and crazy, because if you don't know that sort of like Rubber Hose era of cartoons, they are unhinged, is basically what I'll say. Things just happen for really no apparent reason. There's like almost no, I'm not going to say no coherent sense or thought put into it, because that's not true. It's just more like everything is so much more wild. Things will just like start off like being like, oh, you know, it's like a cute little cat sort of like baking cookies or something, and then the cat transforms into a train, and then the entire kitchen transforms into like a flying saucer, and then it's like, oh, it's just like a weird chase sequence with like ragtime music in the background going like and then suddenly there's like skeletons dancing or whatnot as they come across the screen, and then now it's like underwater, and it just makes no sense, to be perfectly honest. And that's, you know, the fun of it, I suppose. And the animations perfectly fit that, and a lot of the bosses fit that thematically as well, from the wild, absolutely wild boss changes they have. Anyway, so that's enough about aesthetics. You can tell I love the aesthetics of Cuphead, and not only do I love them because of their amazing execution, I love them because they are basically the only game to really lean into that aesthetic. The only other game I can think of is probably like the Bendy series, but I've never played them. Hello, keep walking. And there's probably some others, but you know, it's just fantastic. Now, mechanically, the game is fun, I would say. I like boss rushes more than I like games which have bosses in them necessarily, because the bosses to me are always the core distillation of a fun part of a game. As I said before, I'm not really a big fan of exploration, so the process for platforming to get to a boss, unless it's like got some like interesting like puzzles or I suppose mechanics associated or tied with it, it's kind of boring. Not boring for me, but it's not, I just find it like average, you know. The same way I'm like, I eat, I don't know, maybe like a carrot, I'm just like, hey, you know, carrots are fine. I'm not going to turn my nose up at a carrot or anything like that. But if you gave me like 500 carrots, I'm not going to be like, this is delicious. I'm going to be like, that's a bit too many carrots. So it really is a distillation of core parts of games that I tend to find most enjoyable, which is why I tend to enjoy Cuphead, I think, probably proportionally a bit more than the average person. And that's even come from me, because the game essentially has no story. The story is, oh, you are Cuphead, you are Mugman, you made a deal with the devil, and now you need to go collect debts, or you need to collect ingredients to try and help Miss Chalice. You don't play Cuphead really for the story. It's basically the bare bones story just to get the thing moving. And it's very rare for me, I suppose, to really love a game so much which has no story. Or not no story, but the story is not an important part of it, like at all. You could get rid of a story and it'd be perfectly fine. I think Cuphead would be the exact same game. It would not really be much better or worse. I suppose the stakes, you know, the stakes of like fighting against, you know, the final boss would probably, you know, I guess have a little bit less impact, and you might be a little bit more confused. Everything might feel a bit more samey, but I'm not saying take away the story from Cuphead, but I'm saying it's not a quintessential part of the experience. And it's very rare for me to rate a game so highly, which story basically doesn't play such a big focus in it. But the mechanics itself are just incredibly, incredibly fun. It's a game where it's incredibly difficult, don't get me wrong, and it's even harder if you try and S-rank all the bosses, which, you know, I'm just saying I have done, or go for a passive. Well, to be fair, passive run was actually significantly easier than S-ranking bosses, but it is incredibly, incredibly difficult. So if you do play that, keep that in mind. Even just passing the bosses can be quite a difficult experience in the first place. But it genuinely, the mechanics are tight. You know, the mechanics are like sharp, responsive, which is exactly what you want in a very mechanical based game. Most of the time, what's going on is quite clear, and it's got a lot of interesting mechanics along with it to try and like spice up the action a little bit. So all the bosses obviously have like fixed patterns, and well, not fixed patterns, but they have fixed attacks, I should say. The patterns might be different. So it's sort of a process about iteration, where you play a boss, get so far into it, die, you keep going again and again and again, trying to get further and further and further, as most bosses are, you know. And every time the boss transforms into a different form or unleashes a new attack, it's mostly quite a delight, and it's not too frustrating, I would say, to play, because aesthetically, as I say, the game is fantastic. It's very comedic in a sense. It's an absolute treat to look at. So at least for me personally, when I play it, when I die, I don't feel like, oh, I can't believe I died, unless it's a boss I played a load of times. It's more like, hey, that was a really cool attack. Can't wait to be able to see that again. And mechanically, the mechanics are interesting, I would say. I'm not to say they're revolutionary or anything necessarily. You get different weapon types, that's cool. You get different accessories to like sort of modify how you play the game. That's pretty cool. I think the star of the show definitely, you get a dash as well, which is, you know, pretty standard when it comes to most mechanical based games. I think the star of the show is definitely the parry mechanic, which is basically certain attacks in a boss's repertoire will have a sort of pink glow to it. And if you press the jump button while you're next to something, and in the air, if you're in the air and next to something with a pink glow, you will parry it, which basically gives you a little bit more super power, which you can use to unleash stronger attacks. And it can also, you know, help turn tides against a boss in your favor because you won't take damage from that thing, etc., etc. Like sometimes stage boss mechanics will occur because of it. But of course, if you miss a parry, then you'll take damage from that attack you just hit. So I love that because it's a very sort of like risk-reward based thing. You can choose a difficulty. Do you go for all the parries in a battle? Yeah, if you go for all the parries, you will be, and you actually manage to hit all of them, you will be rewarded. You will get like faster charge up to meter. You will be able to defeat the boss faster, and the game rewards you with a higher grade as well, being like, hey, you parried a lot of things. Congratulations, you clearly shown like mastery of it. But you don't need the parries, of course, to actually beat any of the bosses, right? Apart from like ones which are inherently tied in with the stage mechanics. So if you want to play things safe and be like, I don't trust myself to, you know, have a reaction, to have a timing, to be able to hit the parry, I'm going to keep it safe and just keep my distance and keep dodging. Because the parry is always trying to get you in dangerous situations, which is what is fantastic. It's always great when a game can get a good risk-reward mechanic into the thing, which rewards players who are willing to take that risk, but still, you know, it comes at a cost. It comes at a punishment if you fail to execute, I suppose, on my risk. And it's a very simple mechanic, and it just translates very well to all the bosses, I'm going to say. Sometimes I'll say it's a little bit ambiguous what counts as pink and what isn't, what doesn't, and some things, you know, are parryable, but they don't give you any charge, so it's sort of like, it's just all risk at that point, with very little reward, but so be it. Yeah, but apart from that, I've got really nothing else to say about Cuphead mechanics. It's very applicable to all of them. Like, what you really talk about with Cuphead is you talk about the individual bosses themselves. And I suppose this is where I need to get like a Cuphead tier list so I can just see like all the bosses. Cuphead tier list. Let's see, does this have a DLC? This doesn't have a DLC. I want the Cuphead, all bosses plus DLC. I'm not going to make a tier list necessarily, but I will talk about all the bosses, or at least standout ones. Oh my gosh, I just took OBS off my screen. Just so we have something to talk about. Okay, so this is all bosses in all their phases. Is this in alphabetical order? Why would you put this in alphabetical order? Are you absolutely insane? This is... Okay, this is in alphabetical order. I don't even know. Why has no one made just like a fighting order, like a world order of all the bosses? And DLC mini bosses? How's this? What on earth? Why are all these boss tier lists insane? What is this? What is this ordering? I mean, I do want a list, but I just want to see like a list of where they're in some semblance of an order. Like what? Why is this so difficult? Come on, someone's got to have done it. You know what? I'm gonna pause until I find it. Well, tier list maker was not very good. So instead, I've got the Cuphead wiki open, which is, you know, something I probably should have turned to begin with because it makes a lot more sense. Anyway, so just to have like a quick look with things. Painstakingly made by hand. I assume that's either Lily or Fauna. Is we've got the root pack. They're fine. First boss. They're not actually the first boss. Apparently, Goopy Legrand is meant to be the first tutorial boss. They're both fine. I think Goopy Legrand is actually just kind of boring, but you know he's meant to be kind of boring just so you can sort of get a handle on the mechanics. And root pack is a bit more interesting as the first boss, because it has quite a variety of attacks and a variety of different sort of, you know, very clear distinctions, I suppose, between the stages, which makes it actually feel quite different. Hildeberg is a fantastic boss, I would say. She's the first aerial boss, and she is a surprising jump in difficulty, I think, compared to the other two. Because the first two bosses are like, you know, when you're first starting out, you're like, this is kind of hard. But then you'll probably get a handle of it pretty quickly. Hildeberg is actually, you know, surprisingly long, I suppose, for a fight where you're just like, oh, what is going on? She's got so many phases. And I remember it because she has very distinctive phases, which can change, I should say, between each iteration, because she has 3 different forms, and she'll choose one of 2 forms in her final phase at random, I believe, like the Sagittarius or the Gemini phase. She's very cool. Caney Carnation has got one of the best soundtracks, I think, in the entire game. He's an alright fight. I think he just kind of like throws too many things like at once. Not in a difficulty sense, but it just sort of like makes the fight look very messy in his third phase, and his fourth phase is a bit underwhelming, I would say. But the first time you see it, it's like, whoa, it's cool. But when you actually mechanically break it down, you're sort of just like, oh, it's a bit boring. Ribby and Croaks, surprisingly difficult on S rank. Like, I think they were the boss which took me most episodes. And you might be like, even more than the final boss. Yes, I think even more than the final boss. Or at least equivalent to the final boss. I don't know why they were so difficult on S rank, for me to S rank them on expert mode, but whatever. Anyway, on normal mode, I think we have a very exciting final phase with our slot machine things, but the first phase is very okay. Baroness von Bonbon, I remember, you know, quite fondly, because I think she has a very interesting mechanic where she summons like different mini bosses, or can summon different mini bosses, and then her chasing you at the end is good fun. Beppy the Clown, I always remember, because Beppy the Clown was the first major sort of like jump up in difficulty, but I remember where I was just like, Beppy the Clown took me so many tries to defeat because he's so difficult. That's what I can really say. He's challenging, at very least, because he has a lot going on, and you have very little room for error, I suppose. He has a lot of like overlapping attacks and that sort of thing, which is you might be like, that's a bad thing, but I think they're well constructed such that none of them are ever impossible to dodge. They're all easily anticipatable. But it's just sort of thing where like it's difficult, you know. If it was just an overlapping attack with no sort of consideration of each other, just like two strong attacks, and then it's just like, oh, you know, clearly they put no thought into it, where it was just like, oh, you know, this is undodgeable, then that would be no fun. But Beppy the Clown, fantastic, you know. And then I would consider him as sort of like a division between the early game and the mid game. This is like your true step into a mid game. Jimmy the Great, I think he looks kind of cool. He's a bit easy, I would say. I think he's definitely the easiest in World War 2. So it's sort of just like he ends up being a little bit forgettable because of that. Grim Matchsticks, I think, is your proper, like, if Beppy the Clown wasn't your first step up into, I suppose, the mid game, Grim Matchsticks definitely is. He's also quite a bit of a jump up, and definitely the hardest, I would say, in World 2. What? Oh, that's a coconut. I thought that was a flower, and I was like, what on earth is going on? But I would say he's actually one of the easiest expert mode bosses. The hardest thing about him in expert mode is trying to get your parries off. But it's just like, I don't know, because they reversed the direction of the clouds in one of the fights, in one of the phases, and it just made it like 10 times easier. So I don't know why necessarily that happened, but alright. Wally Warbles was a fantastic... I remember this boss fondly, because I remember the first time I got into his final phase, if you don't know, I played the entirety of Cuphead without, there's these optional run and gun levels where you can use to get money, which you can use to buy upgrades to get different weapon types, which I hated run and gun levels, which I would say certainly is a sour point. It's my least favourite part of the game, still, even after playing through them. So I didn't realise that you could switch weapons with the plane, or at least I forgot with the plane mode. So then that made the final phase really, really difficult, as it turns out. Anyway, he's got a fun second phase, that's all I say. Rumour Honeybottoms is fine. She's a bit annoying. The Travelator mechanic is quite annoying. Captain Brinybeard is probably the first step up, I suppose, into sort of like feeling like late game bosses. He's like the easiest of our late game bosses, I would say. Because he has overlapping attacks like crazy. He like shoots you, the ship shoots you, you've got the barrel, and he summons things to attack you as well. Just an absolutely insane amount of attacks going on. Sally Stage Phase is actually one of my favourite battles. Maybe my favourite battle from the base game, actually. I just like the aesthetic of what she's going on. I suppose in her fight, her faces are really cool and different. Werner Vermin is quite forgettable from what I remember. Dr. Carr's Robot is memorable because of his bullet hell in his final phase. Very fun bullet hell, might I add. Calamaria's got quite a cool amount of mix of overlapping attacks, but I think her final stage is a bit sad. The one where you're meant to because she's got a cool mechanic where basically she's a Gorgon, so she like freezes you if you look at her. So you're meant to hold backwards to not get frozen. But amusingly, actually, when this game was first released, I think we must have patched it at some point. The way you dodged her freeze attack was by not shooting and not moving, which was unintuitive to me. Because the first thing I did was I tried to hold back to try and dodge her Medusa Petrify, but it didn't work. But they changed it since, at least most recently since I played it. Phantom Express, it's kind of cool. That's about it. King Dai, very, very cool fight. Basically a mini boss fight, I suppose, if anything. Very aesthetically on point. Devil, a fitting final boss is what I'd say. But if he wasn't the final boss, I think he would actually not be too memorable. I think he's got an interesting like final phase. It's just like he's just got hard attacks, that's about it, and a lot of attacks. And the DLC, Glumstone, I think is fine. I think he's got a cool final phase, certainly. Moonshine Bomb, I think, is very creative, and I'm not going to spoil for you why I think it's creative, but if you've played Robust, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Howling Aces is definitely my favourite DLC fight. I think it's really fun. Its final phase is super, super fun with the screen rotations and all that, and the lasers are pretty fun to dodge. Monster Freeze, I will say, is definitely my least favourite boss in the DLC. Like, I just don't like it all that much. Like, I think it's he's fun aesthetically, but I don't really like his first/second phase. I don't know which phase it counts as. But Snowman phase is fun. Oh, Esther Winchester. Okay, this might actually be my favourite one. Esther Winchester is such a fun aerial fight. And Chef Soulbreaker is ridiculously difficult. It's just like, it's like a marathon, is probably what I'd say. Angel and Demon, secret boss fight. Very, very cool. King's Leap, also very cool, I would say. I prefer the King's Leap a lot more than I prefer the Running Gun levels. I don't know, that was my very rapid fire review, I suppose, of all of them. What's my favourite boss fight? I think the ones I'll definitely remember, at least on the DLC, will definitely be Esther Winchester and the Dog on Dogs fight. From the base game, Sally's stage play, as I say, is really great. Dr. Carl's robot always comes to mind. Beppy the Clown. And the Carnation? Yeah, I'd put in. No, I think I'd put Hildeberg in. I think Hildeberg's is cooler. Anyway, Cuphead's a really fun game. Would I recommend it to everyone? I would recommend it to most people if you like difficult games or challenging games. But if you probably know already if you don't like mechanical or difficult games or that sort of thing. So I think you'll probably already know if Cuphead is or isn't your sort of game. But anyway, basically the long and short is I had a really fun time playing through it. S ranking it was mostly fun. There's a few bosses which I would, in retrospect, I didn't really enjoy that much S ranking. Like Mortimer Freeze wasn't that fun to S rank, and Ruby and Croak also wasn't that fun to S rank. Mainly because they were difficult, but then I just got, I think, kind of tired of doing them. But the rest of them were actually quite fun. To be perfectly honest, DLC was fantastic. Love to see more from them. Oh, honestly, I'd like to see a different genre from them, but same sort of style. That'd be pretty cool. Like RPG. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, I'm going to round off this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, description, shares are greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we can see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.